Good afternoon. One of my children said when he knew who was coming on this program today, ask him for his autograph because knowing him, he might sign it in gold. My guest has just published his autobiography and that too is turning into gold. And with such a title, how can you wonder? Liberace.
How are you, Mavis?
I'm well. And how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Your name is Vladzio Valentino. Is
Well,
that the right way to say it?
Almost got it right. I actually never used the name. It's pronounced Vladzio. And of course, I wasn't able to pronounce it when I was a kid, so whenever I try, people would say Gesundheit, because it sounded like I was sneezing. But it's Polish for Walter. And I used the name Walter in school. But now my friends call me Lee, and I like you to call me Lee, Mavis.
Thank you very much. Valentino is after Rudolph Valentino. He's about the only screen idol that was before my time.
Well, my mother was a great fan of his, and in fact, she named my youngest brother, who passed away a few years ago, Rudolph. So together we had a Rudolph Valentino in the family.
Did you think Rudolph Valentino was a very marvelous kind of hero?
Well, I was sort of raised with those kind of movie heroes. I remember as a child my father played in silent picture houses when they used to have live music to accompany the films. And Dad used to sort of babysit me from the theater orchestra pit, and I'd sit in the front row and I'd look up at all these marvelous people on the screen. And I remember seeing movies with Rudolph Valentino and Vilma Banky and all those Theda Barras and all those people.
In fact, Rudolph Valentino dressed up a bit like you. But before we go on, could you please describe your outfit for people without a colour set?
Well, we color-wise, we sort of matched today.
I know, accidentally. Yeah,
we're sort of wearing Dubonnet or what is another
Burgundy.
name? Burgundy is another color. This jacket is kind of fun because this jacket really belongs on the wall. It should be framed because it's a work of art. Mm. It's a form of art called batik, and they have never made it into clothing before. An artist in Toronto, Canada, made some yardage on raw silk of the batik design, which is done with wax, and they put wax where they don't want the dye to go, and then they dip it in the dye, and then they melt the wax, and then they put the wax over the part that's just been dyed, and then they apply another color. So this is sort of maroon and shades of Dubonnet or burgundy, and then blue, and then the color sort of bleeds into one another. And if I ever get tired of it, I'll just frame it and put it on the wall.
It would be very hard to think of you without this great acclaim that you have. Don't you sort of absolutely live off it?
Well, I do now, I suppose, but I didn't always have it. Most people, I think, have come to know me, since the television years. But I've been in show business. I've been in music since I was 4 years old, and I've been playing professionally since I was 13. So I've really never known any other life, and I think that if it were taken away from me, I would be, a very empty person without it. It's so natural for me to think along the lines of entertainment and music because I was brought up in it and I was raised with it.
Do you like playing the piano to soothe yourself?
Well, I think when I play for myself, I'm playing mostly to learn. Music is a never-ending learning process. Just when you think you've, mastered it all, somebody comes along with a new sound or a new tempo, or and you're always learning. That it's a vast study, music, and I'm glad it is because I'd like to think that. When I'm 80, I'll still want to learn something that I haven't accomplished,
Is this something that you do on your own, which you actually find extremely soothing, though? Because you do lead a tremendously pressurized life, don't you? So
well,
what do you do for relaxation?
Yes, when I'm on the road and traveling, I I find I have to almost lead the life of an athlete. It's very taxing physically because it isn't just the performance, but all the things that go with it. You know, you're just one person, and yet there are hundreds of demands on your time. Everybody wants a little piece of you, and so that's very tiring. You know, and you have to kind of live the life of an athlete. You got to get your rest, you got to watch what you eat, and you got to be careful not to go to extremes when it comes to having a good time, for instance. I try to do things in moderation, you know, and I drink and I smoke, but I do it moderately because I know that it would have an effect on my performance if I didn't watch it. I never drink before a performance. But after, sometimes I have a couple of drinks to kind of relax me and turn off my adrenaline, so to speak. And when I'm off the road, I can completely relax. I can forget I'm a performer, a musician, and I can get involved in other things.
What struck me in your autobiography, very strongly in fact, was the fact that even as a very small boy, you had a very distinct idea that you were someone. That you were going to be someone, I felt, because you quote, do you remember, by saying that as a child you didn't want to go out and get dirty like other boys. You didn't want to play games. And your father used to say, you really must go out. You're getting too white. You've got to go out and get exercise. Do you
That's
remember?
right,
You
yeah.
wanted to play the piano.
Uh-huh.
So did you have a very real idea of who you're going to be?
Well, it was, I've always had a great love affair with the piano. I've tried to play other instruments, and they turned me off. I remember my brother George decided that it would be nice if I could play the violin. So he was a professional violin teacher. So my parents said, why pay all that money for piano lessons? You got a brother who could teach you to play the violin. So the first time I heard that bow scratch across the strings, it was such an unpleasant sound. I said, that's not for me. Then my dad tried to teach me the French horn. And that was even worse. The sound that came out of that horn just put me off forever, you know. But I just seemed to have an affinity to the piano. And I worked at it feverishly as a child. I suppose because I wasn't forced to do it. In fact, my parents would say, get away from that piano. Go outside and play. You know, because it was a constant, you know, banging away at the piano.
But do you think in any way at all, apart from the fact that you loved it, do you think that you were in fact trying to get away from perhaps the physical poor circumstances of your life at that point?
Well, yes, I think music is always a release from the dreary, everyday things that life can be sometimes. And to me, it was a magic make-believe sort of transport, you know, that took me out of this sort of life that we were born into, you know. We, like I say, we had a very modest family life, and I don't know, I felt as a child, I guess, when I was playing the piano, I was something kind of special, you know. And when I saw that, you know, the children in school, you know, it was like a magnet. It drew people to me, and I felt this is something wonderful, to be able to do something that made people happy and gave them pleasure.
Do you think it made you feel sort of also that you were someone again in the you know, because of the circumstances of your life of being so poor, that this mattered to you, that you had to you know, be somebody aside from that, or not?
Well, I think I was fortunate to live in a section of Milwaukee which was sort of had a village atmosphere, and like I was the only one who played the piano in that community. So whenever there was a need for music, or I was always called upon. And that gave me a little edge, you know. I was a big frog in a little pond, you know. And then, of course, after I got older and branched out into the outside world, I found out, you know, that I was a very minor segment of the music world. And I had to prove myself, you know, in a more determined sort of way. And
was that the cruelest thing that you had to face, which was that you couldn't be a concert pianist as such?
Well, not exactly. That wasn't the disappointing thing. I suppose the most disappointing thing is when I left home and discovered, that the world wasn't really waiting for me. I had to really struggle, and rather than admit that I wasn't an immediate success, I did, other jobs to augment my musical income, which is I gave piano lessons for a while. I had 32 students, and that sort of helped, But some of my best students, unfortunately, were the ones who were most talented who couldn't afford to pay for their piano lessons. But I still taught them because I love seeing a child develop musically, and so I did other jobs. I worked in restaurants and I washed dishes and things like that. But I think that it was worth all the struggle because the determination that has been instilled in me by my family, my early life, I think was very valuable to me in my career.
Have you found it very hard to adjust to the fact that you really are so powerfully rich? I mean, almost ludicrously
I never really
rich,
think of
aren't
it.
you?
I really never think of it that way. I just, I certainly don't count my money before I go to bed. But it just seems that, after all these years and that these rewards have come to me, and I just sort of appreciate them and enjoy them, and I don't gloat over them. I feel that I share them with other people. And in fact, when I'm away, for 6 months, my servants live in luxury, and my dogs, they have it very, very good. Sometimes I find myself in some little place along the way that perhaps is the best accommodation that's available, and I'm sort of closed in a small little place, and I said, what am I doing here? And I have this beautiful home back in California that I could be sitting in. But yet my work is my most important and happiest thing that I do. I love performing, and when I'm on stage, I feel, that I'm in charge, and it's kind of marvelous to be able to take an audience and mold it into different emotions and draw not only laughter from them, but whatever the music calls for,
Do you think that perhaps in part that's why you've never married, that being a bachelor has kept you free to express yourself as you wanted to?
Well, I think my career has been perhaps the most interrupting thing because it has always come first. And most of the people I've gotten involved with romantically don't want to play second fiddle to a piano.
I tell you something that makes me wonder all the time is if you got married and you had an extravagant wife, how much clothes allowance would you let her have, I wonder?
Well, I suppose I would be very generous because I like to see people well-groomed. I like to see them made happy by lovely things.
How do you like a woman to look, in fact?
Well, I like to see women well-groomed, but not in a way that you might consider extreme. I think that the chic look is perhaps the most admired and the most sought after. I think when, for instance, when I select something for my sister or my mother, I buy most of their clothes for them.
They don't mind that.
No, I know their sizes and I know what they like. And some of the things that I buy for them really never go out of style. I don't believe in fad clothing. Like there are so many fads in fashion, and they're here today and gone tomorrow. And I feel that if you buy something that is basically chic, it'll last forever,
Do you like a lot of makeup on women?
Not very, no.
How do you like a woman to act?
Act?
Yes, for instance, I'll tell you an example. When I was a little girl, I remember thinking, I'll never smoke when I'm a mother, because I thought mothers shouldn't smoke.
Uh-huh.
Dating me, if you think about it. But Do you think things like that? I mean, do you think there are some things that women shouldn't do? They should be women in a particular sort of a way, or are you women's lib?
Well, I've always liked women to behave like women, you know. So when they start behaving like men and start to use, you know, profanity and vulgarity and that sort of thing, they cease being women to me. And you know, and I've met women who come on very coarse, you know. And this turns me off. And I think a lot of the things about women's lib are admirable, but I think it's been distorted, you know, by certain women who feel that they're no different from men and they behave like men, and I don't think that's, you know, what I would admire in a woman. I like her to be feminine and pretty and to speak in a well-modulated voice and to be well-groomed. And not to try to match the men in a pub, you know, in the language or something that they use sometimes.
Do you ever feel when you look at your life that from your book I get sometimes a feeling that it's like a story, you know, that you're looking at it like a story and that it's slightly unreal? And then that quote you said in your book again, where you said, "Day is too real for me, night is my favourite time." I mean, does life seem unreal to you in that sort of a way?
Well, I suppose it does when you look at it that way. I've had some fantastic things happen to me that, well, if somebody back in, about 25 years ago predicted, you know, that some of these things might happen to me, and I said, well, you're absolutely insane. I could never face the fantastic things that you predict. And yet they have happened to me, and somehow I survived them, and I've enjoyed them. And if I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't do it any differently because it's been fantastic. I think you have to share the bad with the good, and I think altogether it molds you into a much firmer and more sensible thinking person. And if anything, it's instilled me with a great appreciation for life, because even that was almost taken away from me.
I mean, have you got a nasty thought? Because you appear to have very gentle, nice thoughts. Don't you ever want to say, oh my God?
Well, I suppose I get a little uptight once in a while when I'm pushed too far, you know. But I have learned the most magic word of my vocabulary is to be able to say no sometimes.
Can you say yes to signing this for me?
I would love to.
And for the viewer.
Okay. Now that's part of it, and there's the other. None genuine without this part. That takes the place of Voyage Valentina.